What if I told you Canada's public safety minister once went on record defending an organization that was later exposed as a terrorist front from the Tamil Tigers? What if I also told you that he was part of another organization where a senior member was arrested for trying to procure assault rifles and heat-seeking missiles for the Tigers? And what if his own phone number turned up in seized records of yet another group, one that Canada itself later banned as a Tamil Tiger front? Finally, what if I told you the same minister quietly recused himself from every matter involving the Tamil Tigers, citing nothing more than an abundance of caution to avoid the perception of a conflict of interest? This isn't speculation. These are facts. Some of these were partially exposed by Global News, and the rest you'll hear right here on Northern Perspective. They're buried in university archives, US Justice Department indictments, and even Sri Lanka's own terrorist listings. Let's take a look. We start by giving credit to the organization that actually blew this open. This is Global News, and they've been following Mr. Anandasangari for a series of months now, exposing some of the questionable activity that has been surfacing as a result of the investigation. The latest fell today. Public Safety Minister's phone number was in documents seized during 2006 terror finance probe. Gary Nandasangari's phone number was found in a document seized when RCMP national security officers searched a suspected Tamil Tigers fundraising office in 2006, records obtained by Global News show. The police search took place 9 years before Anandasangari became a Liberal Member of Parliament during a counter-terrorism investigation into a suspected money collection scheme by Sri Lanka's Tamil Tigers. Now, this is interesting because this comes after Global News reported earlier in June that Gary Anandasangari had to recuse himself from 2 files on 2 terrorist groups. Now, he came out and his office had essentially stated, well, this is just out of an abundance of caution. And so naturally the next question is well, why did you have to recuse yourself from matters relating to a terrorist group? And he never explained it. He then tried to say, well, it's not, necessarily the Tamil Tigers, but, all of the Tamil community. Well, that doesn't really make a lot of sense because I'm a Canadian, I'm part of Hamilton. If I was a member of Parliament, I wouldn't have to recuse myself from any matters involving Hamilton. It's actually my duty to represent my community in Parliament. So this doesn't make a lot of sense now, does it? So anyway, that's just a little bit of background. Let's continue. So next, Global News reported that before joining cabinet, the public safety minister wrote immigration support letters for a terror group member. So we did our own video on this as well, but this isn't looking good already for Mr. Anandasangari. So basically what he did is there was this guy hoping to immigrate into Canada, and as a member of Parliament, Gary ended up trying to advocate and ask CBSA to essentially overturn their denial of this guy to actually come in the country. He advocated for him. He said, I want you to overturn this for a guy that was actually part of the Tamil Tigers, according to news reports. So the good thing is CBSA said, no, that's not happening. But the question came up, why were you actively trying to get a guy who was a member of a designated terrorist group in Canada into the country? So his response was, oh, well, it's nothing big. This is something that, everybody does who's a member of Parliament. You're constantly trying to advocate for members of your constituency. Except there was a problem with that. It was later found that the wife of the terror group member, whom Gary was in contact with allegedly, actually doesn't even live in his riding. So tell me another one, right? This takes me back to that scene from Ghostbusters 2, where the Ghostbusters are out there digging through the street.
I got 3,000 phones out in Greenwich Hills. I got about 8 million miles of cable I gotta check.
Right? And the police show up and they're like, yeah, so what are you doing? And Peter Venkman says, oh, well, you know, we got a phone line. We got a phone line here that we're trying to deal with, and blah, 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 blah. And then they come back later.
You're not with Con Ed or the phone company. We checked. So tell me another one.
And they said, yeah, we checked with Con Ed and the phone company. So tell me another one. And then it looks like he's like, I got a major gas leak here.
I got a major gas leak here. Where do you think all this is coming from? The sky?
Like, Gary, tell me another one. What are you trying to say now? And then his office goes on to correct again. It's like, oh, well, you know, you got to advocate for people, and, you know, not necessarily just living in your riding. They, you know, people that are living across Canada. Come on. Continuing on, investigators were executing a search warrant at the WTM headquarters in Toronto on April 22nd, 2006, when they found the document in a room used as a fundraising office, according to RCMP records. Beside the name Gary A., it listed a phone number that Global News matched to one Ananda Sangari used at the time, and that appears in an archived version of his campaign website, voteforgary.ca. It almost looks like it says voteforgery.ca, but I digress. It was part of a thick dossier of evidence filed in federal court in 2009 when prosecutors applied to take over the WTM's properties and bank accounts on the grounds they were controlled by a terrorist group. The RCMP filed the document, which listed Ananda Sangari's phone number and a dozen others in court in a file titled Contact List of Area Coordinators, but no detailed explanation was provided. The document is dated December 29th, 2004, 3 days after the Indian Ocean tsunami devastated parts of Sri Lanka. On that date, Ananda Sangari was reportedly part of a delegation that lobbied politicians to send humanitarian aid to the battered island. The minister's office said Ananda Sangari was a law student then and, quote, took a leading role in organizing and participating in community-driven efforts to support humanitarian relief for the people of Sri Lanka, one of the countries that was most affected by the disaster. One thing that needs to be said is, for objectivity, is that more than a couple of those people on that list Global News reached out to, and they didn't seem to understand why or what the connection was to them being on this list. But we're talking about Gary and Ananda Sangari here. So back in 2004, 2005, he was a law student. This is true. And we've been able to verify that because here's the class photo. So here's the class photo of the graduating class of Osgoode Hall Law School, York University in 2005. And if we look closer, here is Gary Ananda Sangari right here. Okay, fine. So what, you may ask? Well, here's where things really start to get interesting. So back in 2005, there was an article in the Globe and Mail, and it was actually talking about Gary Ananda Sangari. Funny enough, that Globe and Mail article doesn't exist anymore. And it's very peculiar because there's many other articles that actually exist from back then, but this one doesn't. Luckily enough, York University was so proud of Gary and this Globe and Mail article, they actually posted it on their website. Let's take a look. Law student lobbies Prime Minister for aid to Tamils. That's funny, Gary's office didn't mention anything about that. The Globe and Mail interviewed third-year York law student Gary Ananda Sangari for a January 8th feature on getting aid to minority Tamils affected by the tsunami in Sri Lanka. This is what the Global News article was referring to. Ananda Sangari is the media-savvy, BlackBerry-wielding spokesman for the Canadian Tamil Congress, reported the Globe. Keep the Canadian Tamil Congress in mind, folks. After the tsunamis, the group met with 7 Liberal MPs. This week, when Prime Minister Paul Martin stopped by for a photo op in Toronto, Ananda Sangari was part of an invitation-only meeting with the Prime Minister. Quote, "We do have an ability to mobilize on an issue," end quote, said Ananda Sangari, an affable, articulate 32-year-old who arrived clutching copies of recent newspaper stories with parts he objects to, rumors about the Tigers intercepting tsunami aid, highlighted in yellow. We can't show you that because we don't have that picture, because the Globe and Mail article doesn't exist. The Tamil Tigers administer their own territory in the north and east with their own border controls, customs inspections, jails, passports, judicial and banking systems, and their own time zone, a half-hour difference from the rest of Sri Lanka. The day after the tsunamis hit, Ananda Sangari issued a press release saying his group wanted Ottawa to send aid to tiger-controlled regions. Quote, "When my tax dollars and your tax dollars go there, it should go in a responsible, equitable way," end quote, he said, adding that Martin assured him it would. Ananda Sangari acknowledges the, quote, "many allegations," end quote, linking the Tamil Rehabilitation Organization to the Tamil Tigers, or TRO. Quote, "We're living in an ultra-sensitive era when we're linking a humanitarian organization to a terrorist organization," end quote, he said, adding, quote, "There hasn't been a single case reported that links the TRO to any events that would be construed as terrorist," end quote. Ananda Sangari arrived in Toronto in 1983 with his mother following the massacre of 4,000 Tamils in Colombo. He was 10 and the son of the president of the Tamil United Liberation Front, who was also a member of the Sri Lankan Parliament. At Carleton University, Ananda Sangari studied political science and was a vice president of the Student Association. Today, he is finishing a law degree at Osgoode Hall Law School. According to the Globe, he has the potential to become the first Tamil Canadian elected to Parliament. This is 2005, folks. Isn't it interesting that 10 years later, that would be proven to be correct when he joined as part of Trudeau's government? So, this is interesting. So, there was a lot of different stories back then and a lot of facts corroborating the fact that the Tamil Tigers would have these fronts in these other countries that would raise money or intercept fundraisers and direct all of that back to them. And Gary Ananda Sangari was essentially saying, well, we're just trying to raise money. It's interesting that he magically was able to get a meeting with the Prime Minister. And he was defending this other organization saying, it's being called a terrorist organization. Rumors are flying around. Don't worry about any of this stuff. Well, here's the interesting thing, folks. Back in 2005, the Tamil Tigers were not designated as a terrorist organization. But Gary Ananda Sangari was, according to this article, advocating that aid come from the federal government of Canada to Tamil Tiger-controlled territory. Well, guess what happened in 2006, folks? In 2006, the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam, or the Tamil Tigers, or LTTE as they're called, they were designated as a terrorist organization by the Government of Canada in April of 2006. And in June of 2024, this still remains the same. So it was a terrorist organization back in 2006. Gary's talking about it in 2005. And he's advocating that funding go to them. So that's kind of a problem. And this isn't really talked about in the Global News article. Maybe because they didn't find this little gem on the York University website, which you can find in the description as per usual. Now, Gary was also defending this other organization, the TRO, if you remember that. The Tamil Rehabilitation Organization, saying, there's all these nasty rumors, etc., etc., etc. Well, we have to tell you something about them too. Back in 2007, the United States Treasury Department decided to classify them as a terrorist front as well. Quote, TRO passed off its operations as charitable when in fact it was raising money for a designated terrorist group responsible for heinous acts of terrorism, end quote, said Adam J. Subban, director of the Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control. The LTTE, or the Tamil Tigers, is a terrorist group that has waged a violent secessionist campaign for over 2 decades to secure a separate state for Tamil majority regions in Sri Lanka's north and east. The conflict between the LTTE and Sri Lankan military forces has claimed over 60,000 lives and displaced hundreds of thousands of Sri Lankan citizens. In the United States, TRO has raised funds on behalf of the LTTE through a network of individual representatives. According to sources within the organization, TRO is the preferred conduit of funds from the United States to the LTTE in Sri Lanka. Okay, so not only was Gary Nandasangri wanting to send funds from the federal government to the Tamil Tiger controlled regions, that's number one. Not only was Gary Nandasangri trying to defend an organization that was then found to be a front for this organization, not only that, but something else happened during the same time. This is sourced from the Canadian government website of the Public Safety Agency, and this is a report countering radicalization of diaspora communities in Canada. There's one specific page we want to look at. Radical activities extend beyond mere fundraising in Canada. They also include direct attempts to arm terrorists. The most notable recent case in 2006 involved at least half a dozen men from Ontario. And I'm not going to do these individuals the disservice by trying to pronounce their names because I'm not going to pronounce them correctly. But there's two that we want to really focus in on. There's Sahil and there's Sathajan. The men attempted to procure nearly $1 million worth of weapons for the LTTE across the border in New York, including 10 anti-aircraft missiles and 500 assault rifles. These individuals were not marginalized members within the Tamil diaspora. Sabaradam was the communications director of the Canadian Tamil Congress in 2005, and Surachandran was the national president of the Canadian Tamil Students Association. So this one gentleman was actually a senior member for the Canadian Tamil Congress. The same one that Gary Nandasangri was with at the same time. The same one where he was trying to advocate for the people in the Tamil Tiger controlled regions in Sri Lanka at the time with the Prime Minister of Canada. Wow. When I heard this, I thought, holy crap. So you have two different guys that are part of two different Tamil diaspora communities, and one of them is the same one that Gary was a member of. Now the other one, it's interesting. So he was part of this organization in Toronto, and he actually goes on to write in a letter after he was arrested, convicted, and sent to jail that this organization was actually intended to groom people, to radicalize them, and to ensure that they have more support increasing here in Canada within the Tamil youth. Check this out. So this letter is dated August 9th, 2011. And you'll see at the bottom, I must share my experience with you all so that you can make wiser decisions on your next activities. I was a highly motivated and emotionally active youth during my term as a president of the TYO, Tamil Youth Organization Canada, which operated as part of the LTTE. So it was a known basically recruiting center for the Tamil Tigers in Toronto. This stuff is going on, and this was known to CSIS as well from our research. Where's all this stuff in the global news story? That's my question. I love that they're exposing some of this stuff, but when you keep going down the rabbit hole, you end up finding stuff like this. Again, links are all in the description, folks. So this is some scary stuff. Now, not only all of this, the Sri Lankan government has listed all of these diaspora groups as fronts for the Tamil Tigers on their website. Take a look. So this is the government of Sri Lanka, and you can see there in the highlighted at the bottom, the banned entities listed are as follows, and it goes on to say the World Tamil Movement, which is where the RCMP actually raided in 2006, and the Canadian Tamil Congress, which is what Gary Nandasangri and this other radicalized individual was a part of. And you also have the National Council of Canadian Tamils in there. Now, there is some discussion as to whether this is just Sri Lanka naming every diaspora community that is sympathetic to the Tamil group as a banned entity or as a terrorist front or whatever you want to call it, because they want to essentially put down all of that ideology and just have a united Sri Lankan country. There is some discussion on that. Now, we're not here to say that they are or they're not, but what we can say is the RCMP raided one of them. Another of them that is on their ban list, but not that I mentioned, is where this guy was the president of and ended up participating in this crime, which was an FBI sting operation where they got caught trying to buy surface-to-air missiles and assault rifles. And the other guy was part of the CTC, the Canadian Tamil Congress, which is the same organization that Gary Nandasangari was in. And Gary Nandasangari was then defending the TRO, which was also classified as a terror. So there's all of these corresponding links here, folks. Now, the other interesting thing is on Gary Nandasangari's LinkedIn, he just lists that he was counsel for the CTC as of 2007. He doesn't make any mention at all that he was involved with them before that. But we have a news article from his own university where it proves that he was. Wonder why he didn't list that. Maybe it's because the TRO was classified as a not so upstanding organization, years later. Or maybe it's because in 2006, the Tamil Tigers were declared a terrorist organization and he didn't want to have any association with that. I don't know. But someone should really ask Gary Nandasangari about this, because this all comes all full circle back to this initial story by Global News. A phone number was found that belonged to a Gary Nandasangari at the time that the tsunami disaster was affecting people across the world. So is it any wonder that his phone number was found in a shelf in the building of a known terrorist front for the Tamil Tigers, while Gary was actively asking the federal government of Canada and a meeting with the Prime Minister to try and get money to the Tamil Tiger controlled regions, and was actively defending what would later to be found to be another terrorist front. Is there any wonder that his phone number would be there? And it's funny because that Globe and Mail article, it said that we think he's going to be the first Tamil parliamentarian in Canadian history. And 10 years later, that would be proven to be true. Well, Mr. Nandasangari, you may try to recuse yourself from these files with no explanation, but Canadians have a message for you, sir. When this is what your past looked like, and there's all these question marks, and there's all these inconvenient links with nefarious people and nefarious organizations, you actually owe Canadians an explanation. And if you don't want to give it, then maybe it's time you step down and allow someone to take your place that can actually demonstrate transparency and integrity and real accountability.